Starting off this countdown in no particular order, we have Woody Harrelson. Woody Harrelson's dad, Charles Harrelson, was an American hitman and organized crime figure. Yes, you heard me correctly. Beloved actor Woody Harrelson had a father who was a cold-blooded killer. He was just 7 at the time when his father first went to prison. It's said that he was responsible for the deaths of at least 20 people. In 1979, that is when Charles committed his biggest kill of all time. He took out a federal judge by the name of Judge John H. Wood Jr. He was the first federal judge to be killed in the 20th century. He was paid $250,000 to kill off this judge. It was because a drug dealer was about to be sentenced by this judge, who was known as Maximum John, because he always gave out really harsh punishments to drug dealers. So he got Charles to knock him off for him. But this landed him behind bars and in solitary confinement. He was there until he was 69 when he died from a heart attack. Obviously, Woody does not want to be defined by his father's actions. In our 9th spot, we have Joaquin Phoenix. Joaquin is one of the few actors who actually grew up in a cult. He was born into the commune of Children of God, but when he was 4 years old, his parents managed to escape the cult and move. That's actually why they changed their last name to Phoenix, as it symbolizes rebirth, since they were able to leave this cult and start a new life. Unfortunately, he also lost his brother at a young age. In 1993, his brother River Phoenix died from an overdose. Joaquin witnessed this happen, and he was the one that called 911. In our 8th spot today, we have Phil Lewis. Phil Lewis is best known for his role of Mr. Mosby on The Sweet Life of Zack and Cody, and I freaking love that show. Like, it was honestly my childhood. Well, before his Disney Channel days, he actually killed someone. In December of 1991, Lewis fatally hit a 21-year-old woman. She passed away from her injuries from the hit. It was found that Lewis was driving while intoxicated. His blood alcohol levels were 3 times the legal limit of intoxication. As a result, he was convicted of a DUI as well as manslaughter. He was sentenced to 5 years in prison, 2 years probation, and 350 hours of community service. But he managed to only serve 1 year in prison. I guess Disney was able to overlook his past when he auditioned for Mosby on the show. In our 7th spot today, we have Tim Allen. Now, if you look at Tim Allen, you think, aw, he's such a family man. I love Home Improvement and Toy Story. He's a great actor. Wow. Tim Allen actually had quite a dark past before he got into acting. In 1978, Allen was arrested for attempting to traffic more than 650 grams of coke. He was arrested in Kalamazoo Battle Creek International Airport. Now, he actually would have served a lifetime in prison, but he avoided this by giving police information about other dealers. As a result, his sentence was reduced to 3 to 7 years. He ended up serving 2 years and 4 months in prison and then was granted parole in 1981. I guess that's why they say don't judge a book by its cover, because he looks like a wholesome dad, not a trafficker. In our 6th spot, we have Jack Nicholson. In 1974, Time magazine discovered that Jack's sister, June, was actually his mother, not his sister. How wild is that? So June was only 17 when she became pregnant with Jack, and she wasn't married, so her parents agreed to raise the child as their own, with Jane and Lorraine acting like his older sisters. So his parents were actually his grandparents, and his sister Lorraine was his aunt. In regards to his dad, we don't know for sure who is his dad, but some say it was likely June's manager. Other sources claim June really just doesn't know who the father was. By the time Jack found this all out, his mom, June, and his grandma had already passed away. Imagine how that would have changed his life. Like, he was raised on a lie.
In at number 5, Robert Downey Jr. At this point, it's pretty common knowledge that Downey had a history of drug addiction, but what most people don't realize is that his issues all began at the age of 6 years old. His father was a filmmaker and addict who gave his son a to smoke at the age of 6. Downey claims that he was surrounded by drugs as a young kid and often used drugs as a way to kind of bond with his troubled father. He believed that when they did drugs together, it was his father's way of expressing love for him in the only way that he knew how. He nearly ended his acting career after being arrested several times for possession of heroin and use before spending a year in prison in 1999, which meant the cancellation of several acting jobs that he had lined up. After struggling even more with drug abuse between 2001 and 2003, Downey finally was able to kick the habit through a combination of the 12-step recovery program, meditation, yoga, and martial arts training.
Moving on to number 4, we have Leighton Meester. Now, I personally did not know this, but Blair Waldorf, aka Leighton Meester, wasn't always the queen bee of Manhattan. In fact, she was born in prison. Basically, her mom was serving a sentence after smuggling a lot of marijuana out of Jamaica with the help of Layton's dad and Aunt Judy. All of them ended up behind bars. In fact, her aunt managed to escape prison and became America's first woman on the US Marshals 15 Most Wanted list. How insane is that? In the end, Layton's grandmother raised her while her mom served 16 months in prison. Thank gosh she didn't follow in her family's footsteps. In our third spot, we have Christopher Walken. Christopher Walken was involved in a death that is just shrouded in mystery. On November 29th, 1981, 43-year-old actress Natalie Wood was found dead floating face down in the Pacific Ocean. She was on a yacht with her husband Robert Wagner and Christopher Walken when this happened. The thing is, no one really knows what happened to her. Some say she slipped off the deck and fell into the water, while others are convinced that her husband or Christopher Walken had something to do with it, or that they know what happened. One theory is that Natalie and Christopher were having an affair, Wagner found out about it, got mad, and pushed her off the yacht. Now, Wagner seems to be the prime suspect, but many people think that Walken knows exactly what happened. I mean, he barely even talks about the case, and on the rare occasion that he did, he would call it an accident, and also he was absent from the documentary about her. All I'm gonna say is someone knows something. I'm getting the vibe that Walken knows what happened and maybe he just feels guilty about it. In our second spot, we have Charlize Theron. Charlize Theron actually had a very traumatic upbringing. Her dad struggled with alcohol addiction and would constantly threaten Charlize and her mom, Gerda. He would never physically hurt her, but he would hurt Gerda. One night in June of 1991, he got angry and fired shots at both of them. During that altercation, Gerda ran and grabbed her own handgun that she had kept hidden and shot him back. Her shots killed him while Charlize watched it all unravel. In the end, it was declared self-defense and Gerda never faced any charges. But think how traumatizing that must have been for her to see her mother shoot and kill her dad as a teenager. And in our number one spot today, we have Ashton Kutcher. Now, I never knew this, and I was incredibly shocked when I found out about it. But on February 21st of 2001, Ashton Kutcher went over to his then girlfriend's house, Ashley Elrin. The two had planned on going to a post-Grammy party, but when he knocked on the door, there was no answer. That's because Ashley was dead on the floor of her home. She had been stabbed 47 times by a man named the Hollywood Ripper. He was responsible for the death of up to 10 women. As a result, Ashton Kutcher lost his girlfriend very suddenly and in a very traumatic way. He was also scared that he was going to be a suspect in the murder investigation since his fingerprints were on her door, but he never was. But he did have to testify in court.
Starting off this countdown in no particular order, we've got Jon Hamm. Jon Hamm is most notably famous for his role in the hit television series Mad Men as a cutthroat advertising executive. What he may not want you to know about him, however, were his less than savory college days that landed him in some serious trouble. In 1990, Jon was arrested for his alleged role in a fraternity hazing that turned horribly violent. His fraternity house was even dissolved after Hamm and his friends harmed a pledge so violently that he was in the hospital, even going as far as to light him on fire. Jon was charged with a misdemeanor offense, and when he was asked about it in 2018, his response wasn't the best. Quote, "I was essentially acquitted. I wasn't convicted of anything. I was caught up in a big situation, a stupid kid in a stupid situation, and it was a bummer. I moved on from it." Okay, now we're moving on, I guess. And at number 9 is Richard Pryor, the iconic comedian who is often cited as direct inspiration for other comedy legends like Eddie Murphy and Dave Chappelle. Pryor changed the game. But what you may not know is that there was an extremely dark past behind the All Smiles comic. Richard grew up in an extremely unstable childhood, raised by a substance-using mother in a brothel in Illinois. Richard saw things that no child should ever have to see, and to cope with such a horrifying childhood, he also turned to substance use to self-medicate. Richard was married 7 times to 5 different women who had trouble with the comic's insatiable personal life. He even almost passed away at his own hand when he doused himself in rum and lit himself on fire while using substances. Pryor's friend even stated in an interview, quote, "He has about 13 personalities, and while you could deal with 9 of them, the other 4 are a nightmare." At number 8 is Billy Tipton. Billy Tipton, if you haven't heard of him, was a revered jazz musician who rose to fame in the 1940s and 1950s. He lived his life in relative normalcy outside of his celebrity status. Although he was never married, he did have 5 serious girlfriends, all of whom referred to themselves as Miss Tipton. Eventually, he settled down with a woman named Kelly, and they adopted 3 sons together. It wasn't until his death from a stomach ulcer in 1989 that, as he was being rushed to the hospital, his giant secret was uncovered. Billy Tipton was born a woman and had concealed his sex throughout his entire life, even from his relationships. The revelation came as, quote, "a shock shock to nearly everyone, including the women who had considered themselves his wives, as well as his sons and the musicians who traveled with him. To explain away any intimacy that would have happened between his partners, Billy reportedly said that he was in a serious car accident that mutilated his body, leaving him unable to perform. At the time this was revealed, it sent shockwaves through the music scene where trans performers were basically completely unheard of. And at number 7 is Prince. The iconic pop singer is considered one of the greatest musicians to have ever lived, but he also had a secret that was only uncovered upon his tragic and sudden death in 2016. After he passed, many stories started to come to light as both bank statements became public and from various sources. These bank statements revealed that Prince had been secretly donating insane sums of money to various charities throughout his life, each with the condition that the donation be private and that the donor be kept a secret. A few organizations that he did support in the days before his death were the Harlem Children's Zone and Uptown Dance Academy, New York. He even donated $12,000 to the Louisville Free Public Library in order to keep it from closing, all under the condition that they keep his name unlisted from donor records. He reportedly gave thousands away at a time, particularly to charities related to children, as his own child tragically passed away after only 6 days of life. He also focused on environmental issues, and uniquely, unlike a lot of celebrities who choose to invest so they get a financial return, Prince just donated to foundations that support environmental causes and a transition to solar power. Number 6, Jimmy Page. Jimmy Page is the virtuoso guitarist and founder of Led Zeppelin. Jimmy is largely known as one of the greatest guitarists in the history of rock music. I mean, he set the standard for the many who have imitated his electric style. Yet, what he may not want you to know about him is his predatory relationship with a young girl who was only 14 at the time. While he toured with Led Zeppelin, Jimmy dated Lori Maddox, although they kept their relationship extremely private and basically hidden because it was, you know, illegal and creepy. Even in the loose 70s, this relationship could have put Page in jail. They dated for a little while, and who knows what they did behind the scenes, but Jimmy eventually dumped her for BB Bell, who was of age at the time, thank God. Either way, not a fan of this one.
We are now at our 5th and halfway mark with Sean Penn. A number of women have come forward saying that Sean Penn has been aggressive towards them. In fact, he has mistreated a number of his partners, including Madonna. They were married from 1985 to 1989. While in December of 1988, Penn allegedly tied Madonna to a chair and held her hostage for 9 hours and apparently hit her multiple times. When he untied her to let her use the bathroom, she fled to the police station. One officer said, and I quote, "Madonna staggered into the station. She was distraught, crying with makeup smeared all over her face. I hardly recognized her. She had obviously been struck." Sean was charged with inflicting corporal injury and traumatic conditions on Madonna, as well as battery. But Madonna withdrew her complaint a week later and has rarely commented on it since, which is quite odd. Why would she say that he harmed her and then retract the statement? So who knows what really happened?
At number 4 is Jackie Chan. While Jackie Chan appeared as a comedic kung fu fighting man on the screen, his personal life is absolutely insane and surprisingly not well known. In fact, Jackie himself didn't know until well into his career just how many secrets were being kept in his family. He learned in 2003 that he had 2 secret brothers living in China and that his father was a nationalist spy on secret missions to bust substance crime in mainland China. In fact, that's where he met Jackie's mother. In what seems like a moment straight out of a noir crime boss movie, Jackie's father met his mother, Lily Chan, because he was sent to bust her as an infamous dealer and legendary gambler in Shanghai. So, his mother was one of the lords of the Chinese underbelly, and his father was sent to arrest her. The two fled to Australia together, where they lived until their death. Jackie's father also revealed that the actor's real family name isn't Chan at all, but rather Fang. How's that for a family reunion? And at number 3 is Rose McGowan. Rose was one of the founding spokespersons in the Me Too movement, joining dozens of women who brought Harvey Weinstein to justice. She is best known for her 90s movies like Jawbreaker, Scream, and Encino Man. But what you may not know about her is her rather horrifying upbringing. She was born in Florence, Italy, where her parents lived in a commune called the Children of God. Basically, she was born into a cult that had mass allegations of horrifying crimes against humanity. I can't really say what they are because of YouTube restrictions, but if you're curious, I suggest you look into it with a serious content warning in mind. The cult in question lured people in with promises of all kinds of physical intimacy and activities, with extremely young women set to perform such acts on the men in the cult. Luckily for Rose, she was largely protected from the more heinous side of the cult, and she and her family fled when she was 14 years old, where, quote, "We hid in an old stone house and had to boil pots of of water to take baths. The cult sent people to find us. I remember a man trying to break in with a hammer. Number 2 on the list, Rihanna. While the celebrity singer is in the news lately for her exciting pregnancy with A$AP Rocky, what you may not know about her is her rather insane early life, and the secrets that they kept even from her until they were finally brought to light. Old family photos were unearthed that reveal a secret side of the family that Rihanna herself rarely ever talks about: her father's other kids. Rihanna has 3 older siblings through her father by 3 different women, as he admitted to being quite the womanizer in his heyday. Her and her father have an extremely complicated relationship, as he has dealt with substance use issues for most of his life. And now to find out that she had 3 other siblings she knew nothing about, it's a wonder the two have stuck together through so much.
Last but certainly least, in our number 1 spot, Jimmy Savile. Radio personality Jimmy Savile was always upheld as an outstanding citizen that was not only generous but also a very charitable man. So charitable, in fact, that he was even knighted by the Queen for his illustrious career. Although after his death, his dark secrets began to slowly come to light and his reputation will be changed forever. After his death in 2011, Time magazine reported on multiple allegations in regards to sexual misconduct and assault. According to Exaro, the review found that he had been involved in an inappropriate sexual conduct with boys and girls, 3 of which were only 9 years old at the time. Many of the accusations even put the abuse in a timeline where he was still working for the BBC, meaning that for years his predatory behavior had either gone unnoticed or was covered up to protect their image. In at number 10, Woody Harrelson. In order for Woody Harrelson to become the man that he is today, he had to overcome a lot of baggage that his father left over for him. Woody is a prolific actor now and just about nails it with every performance that he delivers. Although around the age of 12, Woody learned more about his father than he probably wanted to. Upon looking into what Woody's father actually did for a living, we found a ton of evidence online that he used to be a hitman. There is an entire Wikipedia page dedicated to each of the murders that he was involved with, including allegations of being involved with John F. Kennedy's assassination, although that's probably more conspiracy theory than anything else. In 1968, he was acquitted by a jury in Angleton, Texas for the murder of Alan Berg. That same year, he was tried again for the 1968 murder for hire killing of a man named Sam DeGalia Jr. Apparently, he was paid about $2,000, which by today's standard would be about 15 grand, to murder the grain dealer and father of 4. Woody Harrelson's father was then sentenced to 15 years in jail, but was released on good behavior after only 5 years. His nail in the coffin, though, was when he and his wife were implicated in the murder of Judge John H. Wood Jr. in 1979. In at number 9, Lamar Odom. The former NBA star who was once married to Khloe Kardashian certainly had a spotlight put on his life and struggles therein that exposed some of his deepest and darkest secrets. I truly believe that if he hadn't have married a Kardashian, we still would have never really learned who he truly was. In his 2019 memoir titled Darkness to Light, Lamar talks about the scandal that took place at the Hollywood Roosevelt Hotel in 2012. He had arranged for 2 to meet him there, as well as reaching out to his drug contact to provide a stash, as he put it. When his wife saw the bill come up on his credit card, though, she immediately showed up with her mom, Kris Jenner, and pounced on the first woman that she saw. Lamar recalls Khloe dropping vicious blows while Kris screamed for her security team to restrain her daughter. Khloe then instructed the security to dispose of all the in the room. Although it wasn't much long after this that in 2015 he was found again in a hotel room, again accompanied by prostitutes. This time, however, there was no Kardashian at his side to hide the mess that he had just made. In at number 8, Joaquin Phoenix. Believe it or not, but Phoenix isn't actually Joaquin's last name. He was born in the Puerto Rican commune known as the Children of God cult. At the age of 4, his parents managed to escape the cult and relocate their family to the mainland. From there, they changed their last name to Phoenix in order to symbolize a rebirth. Although Joaquin's dark past didn't stop there. His family struggles continued in 1992 when he watched his brother River Phoenix die from an overdose. To make matters worse, he was the one who had to call 911 after his brother collapsed at the famous Viper Room nightclub in Los Angeles. In at number 7, Gene Wilder. Gene Wilder will forever be remembered as one of the cornerstones of comedic acting. He had unparalleled abilities to make people smile. However, it was this image that he had built around himself as a comedian that also barred him from ever talking about his struggles with mental health. It wasn't until Gene Wilder passed away at the age of 83 that many fans learned exactly what had been plaguing him for years. When Us Weekly released his cause of death, they mentioned that he had complications with Alzheimer's disease. Not too long after that, his family released a statement to clarify why he had kept his diagnosis private. His nephew said in a statement, "The decision to wait until this time to disclose his condition wasn't vanity, but more so that the countless young children that would smile or call out to him, 'There's Willy Wonka,' would not have to be exposed to an adult referencing illness or trouble and causing delight to travel to worry, disappointment, or confusion. He simply couldn't bear the idea of one less smile in the world." And I think I'm gonna cry now. Yep, we're getting watery. In at number 6, Jack Nicholson. As a superstar both on and off the screen, Jack Nicholson has had an incredible life so far that seemed to be all out in the open for everyone to see. Back in June of 1974 though, when Jack was 37 years old, he discovered shocking new details about his own birth. With his movie Chinatown scheduled to premiere in theaters everywhere, a reporter at Time magazine decided to do a cover story of Jack. Although while preparing for this story and doing some research on the actor, the reporter discovered that the woman for whom Jack had lovingly referred to as his sister was actually his biological mother. Jack had been the illegitimate child of 17-year-old June Nicholson on April 22, 1937. Although because she was so young, her parents agreed to raise Jack as their own and present to him that June was actually his sister. It's said that even on their deathbeds, both maternal grandparents of Nicholson had kept this secret from him.
In at number 5 is Matthew Broderick. Matthew Broderick is known largely for his titular role as Ferris Bueller in the John Hughes coming-of-age film Ferris Bueller's Day Off. He was also in The Producers and a bunch of other A-list movies. What you may not know about him, however, is that he was directly involved and in fact caused the death of numerous people. He and Jennifer Grey, the star of Dirty Dancing, were on a romantic vacation in Ireland when Matthew head-on hit the car of a 28-year-old woman and her mother. Both women were pronounced dead at the hospital. The road was straight and easy to navigate. The issue was that they were in Ireland, and he, out of habit, drove on the wrong side of the road, which led to the crash. Following the accident, Broderick was convicted of careless driving but was only fined $175, which to this day the family of the victims called a quote travesty of justice.
In at number 4, Chris D'Elia. Actor and comedian Chris D'Elia just recently was part of the Netflix show called You, and in the show he plays a scumbag comedian that was also hiding the fact that he was secretly a pedophile. Turns out that he had just been method acting for this role for a very long time. D'Elia has been accused of grooming and attempting to solicit nude photographs from underage girls. A woman named Simone tweeted out a screenshot of her alleged interactions with Chris, which began a thread of other women sharing their interactions with him as well. The stories are all pretty horrific considering that these women were all underage at the time that Chris had been sending these messages to them. To make matters even worse for him, a video clip from his podcast was uploaded where he said that 14-year-old girls look like they're 30. At the time of making this video, Chris has yet to comment on the accusations, so keep that in mind, but with that said, he is most definitely keeping some dark secrets. In at number 3, Richard Pryor. This dark secret would probably not sound like a big deal to everyone living in 2020, but back in the 1970s it would have been much more dangerous. Both Richard Pryor and Marlon Brando kept each other's secrets right up until their death, although the widow of Richard Pryor confirmed a claim by music producer Quincy Jones that the late comedian and Marlon Brando were indeed lovers. His widow Jennifer Lee Pryor said that he was openly bisexual and would be cracking up about his relationship with Brando going public. Having his widow back this story up does give it a lot more weight considering that Quincy Jones is known to make some wild claims. He also has said that Marlon Brando had no objection to sleeping with anyone, and he allegedly has been with James Baldwin as well as Marvin Gaye. But what a power couple those two could have been in today's age. Can you imagine if Richard Pryor and the Godfather Marlon Brando were a Hollywood couple? Amazing. That would have been amazing. Leave me a comment down below what you think their celebrity couple name would be. And at number 2, Charlize Theron. Before she became a world-famous actress, Charlize Theron suffered through a lot of tragedy in her childhood. While speaking with Howard Stern, she spoke openly about what it was like to grow up in a household with an alcoholic father and what it was like to deal with her mother shooting and killing her dad in self-defense. For most of her life, Charlize had to just ignore her shocking past. Whenever someone asked her about her father, she had to lie and say that he was killed in a car accident. She didn't tell anyone, nor did she ever want to tell anyone what had actually happened. Imagine holding that traumatic secret not only for yourself, but for your mother as well. During the talk with Stern, she also said that she never wanted to feel like a victim, which is kind of why she avoided telling this story for so long. Adding, "I struggled with that for many years until I actually started therapy." Charlize is not ashamed of what her mother had to do in order to protect them though. She believes that the more we talk about these things, the more that we realize we are not alone in any of it. For her, she just looks at it as a life lesson, a story about growing up with an alcoholic father and what that does to a person.
And in at number 1 is Mark Wahlberg. The actor and singer needs no introduction, but he may need a little disclaimer beside his name for the rather horrifying incident he caused in the 80s. When he was 16 years old, Mark had an extremely harsh life, and he ended up brutally harming an elderly Vietnamese man in a racially motivated attack. He shouted slurs at him while physically harming him so badly that Mark was charged with attempted murder. While he was sentenced to 2 years in prison, for some reason he only served 45 days. In a beautiful show of faith, his victim, whose name is Johnny Trin, stated that he forgives smart. Quote, "Everyone deserves another chance. He was young and reckless, but I forgive him now. He paid for his crime when he went to prison." Mark got a pardon from the court, basically exonerating him from his crime, an action that he later stated he regrets. Quote, "I didn't need that. I spent 28 years righting the wrong. I was relieved to find out that the injuries to his eye had occurred in the early 70s and not from the incident that happened that night, but I was able to meet with him and his wife and his daughter and apologize for these horrific acts. Some good can come out of it."